What's up guys, my name is Natalie and welcome to my Nook of Novels. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up, so I'm going to be telling you guys about all of the books that I read in the month of September. So I ended up reading a lot of things in September, but I didn't really follow my TBR. I've just kind of really been in the mood to mood read, and so I kind of just read whatever I wanted to, and it has been quite refreshing. I'm super excited about all the books that I'm talking about today. The first thing that I read was Calibans War by James S. Corey. This is the second book in the Expanse series, and I really enjoyed this one. I knew I was going to. I really loved the first book. Leviathan Wakes is about this civilian ship that gets blown up, and this dude witnesses it, and they see this Martian labeling on some of the things, and so they broadcast to the entire universe that Mars has blown up the civilian spacecraft, and it basically starts this galaxy war. So lots of chaos happening there. I gave this 4.25 stars. I think I gave the first one 4.5 stars. I like this one a teeny tiny bit less than the first one just because it felt slightly less action-packed, I think. The first book just surprised me so much, and so I was expecting the same level of excitement from this one, and it was just not quite as enjoyable, I think, as the first one. The plot was just a little teeny bit slower, but it was definitely still super action-packed. There was a lot happening, but just not as much as the first book. So only because I'm comparing it to the first one in my brain the whole time. This was still, like I said, a super good book. His writing is really enjoyable, and mostly the plot and the characters are just top tier amazing. So yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this one. And the new characters that were introduced, one of them I just love so much. Both of them are really great, but just one of the new characters, I'm just so excited to see where their story goes throughout the rest of the series, and if we get to see more of them, because I definitely really love that. The next thing that I read was The Hellbound Volume 2 by Yeon Sang-ho and Choi Gyu-seok. I also very much enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. This is the sequel to the first book, obviously, because it's volume 2. I really enjoyed the first one. This was interesting because it didn't follow the same characters the first book did, which I was not expecting. I don't want to say too much in terms of plot because I do not want to spoil this, but basically the series is about these demon creatures that kind of come and drag people to hell. Basically, they burn them alive, and before they come, people get a message from these things that people think they're angels, and they tell people when they're going to hell. It's basically this huge political fight between these church people that think that it's a message from God and these other people who don't really know what it is. It gets very much into just like moral things about the church people trying to run the government, basically. The way that this book ended threw me for a loop because A, I was not really expecting this thing to happen, but B, it just made me really think, because the way that it ended was definitely a good thing, but it was also good for some bad people. So I was not really sure how to feel about it, and I'm excited for the next book. I don't know when it's coming out, probably sometime next year, because I think that there was a year between the first and the second volume of this, and this one just came out a couple months ago, I think. So it's sad that I have to wait so long for the next volume, but yeah, this was really enjoyable and it made me think a lot, so I definitely really liked it. The next thing I read was The Curious Castle by Susan Cappadonia Love featuring Reese. This is an Our Generation doll book. Obviously, I read it for a video that I did where I was planning on reading 2 or 3, but I only ended up reading the 1. I will have the video linked down below if you guys want to check it out, but basically, I just thought it was funny that I had these doll books and I haven't read them, and I was like, what if they're actually good? They just give off very cheesy kids book vibes, but I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars because just the traveling vibes of it made me happy. It's about this girl who wins this writing contest. The prize for that is a trip to places in Europe where there are all these different castles, and she gets to sleep in the castles and just look at all these different things. Like I said, I just loved the travel vibes and the childhood vibes too, because it was a very childish type of read, because obviously it is for small kids who buy these dolls. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The next thing that I read was The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I read this for school, and and I liked this. I am not a huge fan of classics, so I didn't have incredibly high hopes for this, I guess. And if you're wondering what this is about, it basically, at the start of it, this dude discovers these girls dancing in the woods and think that there is some witchcraft happening, and it takes place in Salem during the witch trials, and so everyone is just basically afraid that everyone else is a witch. It's interesting seeing the way that all of the different characters react to the idea of witchcraft and just how judgy they are to all of each other about these different things, because everyone is just appalled by the fact that one of the characters like doesn't go to church, and just the slut shaming and everyone pointing their fingers at all of the women in this book was definitely an interesting thing to see how it played out, and just everyone being terrified of each other. Small town drama vibes definitely came from this book, and I was a fan. I definitely enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed reading this in a classroom setting too, and discussing all of the things and comparing it to this other movie that we watched too. It was just a really fun time, and I enjoyed the experience. So yeah, I gave this one 3.75 stars. The next thing I read was Mr. Lightbulb by Wojciech Wasicek, I think is how you say it. Not 100% sure. I got this from Barnes & Noble a couple weeks ago. I think it was, maybe it was last week. I'm not sure, but I had seen this the last time that I went to Barnes & Noble, and I was gonna get it, but I was like, it's kind of expensive, so I don't really know that I want to get it right now. But I just kept thinking about it after that, and I looked to see if my libraries had it, and they didn't, so I just went ahead and picked it up the last time I went to Barnes & Noble, and I didn't mean to start reading it, but then I did, and then I just read the whole thing in a couple days. Does that ever happen to y'all where you're like, oh, I'm gonna read the first like couple pages, and then you read the whole thing? This was kind of the thing that got me started on this whole mood reading kick, because I just really wanted to pick it up, and so I did, and I'm glad I did. I gave this 4 stars. It is very unique in the way that it tells the story, because it's about this kid who has this ability. I don't want to say what it is because I feel like it comes up pretty far into the story, and so I don't want to be spoilery about it. I think it's on the description in the back. I don't like how much descriptions reveal sometimes, so I feel like it's better to go in not knowing that. It's very metaphorical, because the main character, he grows up in a very poor family, and his dad has a disability that he got from work, but the way that that's represented in the story is his job is like ironing all these clothes, but one day he used an iron that was like too big and too heavy for him or something, and so it flattened him, and he's just this big pancake basically, and he's just like a round like flat thing. He's not even really a person anymore. People think that he's like a rug or a blanket or whatever that has a face. It's really strange. But yeah, again, I love the metaphorical things happening in this, and the art style was fun and gave me Persepolis vibes. The style of the art as well as the story both gave those vibes. I really love how unique it was, and the message of like, you're allowed to be who you are basically, and you don't have to listen to other people's judgment of that. Definitely seeing the main character's mental health struggles as well, and just feeling like he's really alone and doesn't really have much in his life was very sad and enjoyable to read, because I love sad things. Y'all know this by now if you've seen pretty much any of my other videos, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. The next thing that I finished this month is so exciting, because it is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I technically originally picked it up in March, but then I set it down for a couple months and then started it over in June. That's 4 months. That is a lot of months to be reading the same book. It's very big though, so yeah, I'm so glad I finally got this done. It was stressing me out that it was still in my currently reading on Goodreads and still sitting in my pile of currently reading books. I should also probably mention that the premise of The Priory of the Orange Tree is hard to explain. It's kind of complicated. Basically, there's this queen who, there's a prophecy that if she is killed, then the kingdom will fall because of these evil dragons that tried to destroy the kingdom a long time ago. But the people from this other place like dragons. These dragons are nice. They don't like these dragons, but these ones are good. But yeah, that's probably a good like basic knowledge of the plot before going into it. I definitely want to reread this at some point physically, because when I originally picked it up, I was planning on listening to the audiobook and reading it alongside each other, but I for some reason just couldn't really focus that much that way, so I started doing other things while I was listening to it, but then that led to me tuning it out, which I cannot just listen to audiobooks and not read alongside them, because I will tune them out always. I don't know why I still try to do that sometimes, because it's just not something that I can do. I did not entirely know what was going on the whole time in this book. I kind of got the gist of most of what happened, but I'm really really not sure, to be honest with you. So that's why I want to reread this at some point. But I did still enjoy it though. I gave it 3.5 stars. I really liked her writing style. It was very pretty, and just the vibes, the fantasy vibes and the dragons. It was definitely an enjoyable time. I just wish that I could have understood more what was happening and been more immersed in the story. But again, it's not the book's fault. It's just me not being able to pay attention to audiobooks. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to whenever I reread this. It will probably be quite a while from now though, because I don't have the attention span, and I don't think I will anytime soon. But one day I will read this again. The next thing I finished was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I read this because my friend said that it's one of his favorite books, but he hates the ending. And I understand that. I understand why a lot of people do not like the ending of this book and why it's so popular, because it definitely was super easy to read, and I felt like I was flying through it the whole time, honestly. I definitely felt a distinction between all of the characters. There were only a couple points where I was like, wait, whose perspective am I reading from? And that was mostly just because I would be in the middle of a chapter when I'd set it down and picked it back up and was just kind of a wee bit confused. I really liked most of these characters. I definitely had a favorite. Nate is just a great character. They all are great, but Nate is just superior. I feel like that's to be expected. He definitely feels like one of those characters that's meant to be the bad boy that everyone loves, and I do love him. He's the greatest. The premise of this book, I should probably mention, is there's these 5 people all in detention together, and one of them is killed, and the 4 others of them are left. It switches between their perspectives, and you're trying to figure out who did it. The way that this ended, obviously I'm not going to spoil it and tell you guys what happened, but I understand, like I said, why people don't like it, and I understand why the author did that as well. I'm okay with it. I don't love it, but I think it was a good ending. Not the greatest, but I think it was a solid ending, and I really liked what that had to say about, like, the fact that just because somebody is suffering doesn't make their actions excusable. I think that it definitely fits with the personalities of the people involved, why the ending happened that way. It was kind of not extremely predictable. There was definitely a couple people that I was like, if they end up being the people that did it, I'm going to commit tax fraud, because I literally would have seen that coming from a mile away, but it wasn't them, so that's good. I gave this 4 stars, and this is the one that I listened to the audiobook while I was reading along, and as it so happens, I did not get extremely distracted because I was reading along with it. Funny how that works. I should learn from my mistakes and always do that. I don't know why. I don't sometimes. But anyway, I liked this one. The next thing that I read was The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace, and I loved this so much. It is a poetry book. She's basically talking about how her ex affected her and how you can be your own knight in shining armor. If you're struggling, you don't need somebody else to save you. You can be that person for yourself. And like, she didn't realize that, and how like since she realized that she could be that for herself, she grew as a person so much. And there's a part where it's talking about the princess fell from the tower, and then that's when she realized that she had wings, because then she like flew away. And I just love that. The metaphorical things in this just made me so happy. This one quote literally is me. I love it so much. There were definitely a lot of quotes that I took pictures of from the book, but this one I want to frame and put on my wall. I love it so much. It says, "Who would I have been without the inspiration behind my demons? Probably not a poet." And I just love it. Like, the vibes of this book. I love poetry, but like this specifically, because it's talking about not just her ex, but also general trauma from her childhood, and how all of this has developed her to be the person that she is, and the fact that anybody can be a queen. They just have to basically believe in themselves. It's just amazing. I love the vibes. I love the message. I love the metaphorical thing about it. It was so quick to get through too, and just everything about it just made my heart happy, and I definitely want to reread it a million times, and I'm definitely picking up the sequel, and I really want to pick up everything else that Amanda Lovelace has written, because I just absolutely fell in love with this book. The final thing that I read was Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh. I gave this book 4 stars because going into it, I was expecting it to be a lot like Furiously Happy, which I gave 5 stars. It's a book that I absolutely love so much, and both of them are basically stories of these women telling about their mental health struggles, but in a funny way. And this one just wasn't quite as funny to me. It doesn't have my sense of humor as much as Furiously Happy did, and I feel like the whole time I was reading it, I was comparing it to that, because because it's just what I was expecting from it, and it just wasn't quite that, but it wasn't a bad book at all. Like I said, I still gave it 4 stars, but that's just what prevented it from being 5, I guess, was the fact that I was comparing it to that in my head the whole time, and it just wasn't quite like top tier. I loved it so much. The format of it was very interesting too, because it's based on a webcomic that she has, so every chapter, the page is a different color, which is cool. The pages reminded me of reading a picture book because of the texture of them, which I just really enjoyed. Her illustrations are really funny, and the things that she talks about in the book, they are funny. Just not like my exact sense of humor, like I said. And this one also was slightly less relatable for me than Furiously Happy, because the exact struggles that she's talking about are just not things that I personally struggle with as much. Like, one of the main things that she talks about is her lack of motivation, but for me personally, like, I just don't struggle with that, like, on a basic level, where I just feel like I can't even stand up and like walk 5 feet to the trash can to throw something away or something like that. It just didn't click with me as much. Her struggles just didn't speak to me on a personal level like Furiously Happy did. That's why there's definitely kind of a disconnect there. But again, it was very enjoyable. It was still funny and still insightful, I guess. It was interesting seeing her experiences and how she copes with her mental health struggles and what she does to push through and still try to be a functioning human. And yeah, it was definitely a fun time. And I'm still planning on picking up her other book, which is Solutions and Other Problems, which I've heard is a bit darker, but I'm still excited for that. Maybe I'll enjoy it more because it's darker. Those are all of the things that I read in the month of September. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then please hit the like button and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to see the other videos that I post, usually on Tuesdays. Recently, they've not been on Tuesdays. I've just been so busy, but I'm trying to get back on top of things and have them end up being on Tuesdays. If they're not, I'm sorry. I'm trying, I swear. My Bookstagram and Goodreads will be linked in the description if you guys would like to check out either of those, as well as the playlist to my other wrap-ups. Comment down below your favorite book that you read in the month of September. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!